And let's start the music. Let's talk Zelda 2, shall we? Zelda 2, you can see the wonderful, I think that's actually, yeah, it says European version. This is the PAL cover. This is one of the Zelda games that I don't have a physical version that I can hold into the camera. I only ever played this through like digital releases. I only have it like nowadays on Nintendo Switch Online, and I think I first played it on the 3DS for the Ambassador program, because I got the 3DS on launch day before they cut the price 30%. But yeah, Zelda 2 came out in 1987, only 11 months after Zelda 1. Also for the Famicom Disk System, just like the first game. And it was ported like roughly 1.5 years, or almost 2 years later, to the rest of the world. So late 1988 it came out. One of the, I feel like, rare games where we Europeans got it before the Americans, like a month or so. That didn't really happen that often. Let me turn this down actually a little bit. Zelda 2 is often... Hey Davey, good to see ya. Zelda 2 is often, like, categorized as the black sheep of the franchise. And even I like to group it up with, like, two other notorious child, the bastard child, yeah. I like to group it up with two other, like, notoriously different second entries in the franchise that came out around the same time, which is Castlevania Simon's Quest, Castlevania 2, and Final Fantasy 2. Those weren't the first, like, sequels to video games, but it was still very, very early in video game history, so the concept of a sequel was pretty new. And that early on, a lot of developers, not all of them, looking at you, Mega Man, which is like Mega Man 1 through 6 is basically the same game, just with different levels. But a lot of developers decided to experiment a lot in the second entry. And Zelda 2 is no exception. Now, I personally have gone on record, and I still am going on record, saying that out of those 3 games that I just mentioned, Zelda 2, Castlevania 2, and Final Fantasy 2, Zelda 2 is the best one. And I stand by that. It is a good game. Mega Man is Capcom. Or was Capcom, I guess. It still is Capcom. Zelda 2 is a direct sequel to Zelda 1. Which is something also that later the series would shake up. There are some direct sequels. Like, Majora's Mask is a direct sequel to Ocarina of Time. Phantom Hourglass is a direct sequel to Wind Waker. There's some other examples. But come the next game in the series, we would pretty much wipe the slate clean and have completely new characters that are like reincarnations, and we have a different Hyrule, different layout, different geography. But Zelda 2 is a direct sequel to Zelda 1. Instead of continuing the gameplay of Zelda 1, like the top-down, explore the world, and there's like seamless, well, not seamless transitions, but there's no perspective change between dungeons, between overworld, between things where stuff happens, and the exploration, the action scenes and the exploration scenes. Getting items, using those items to defeat enemies. You know Zelda 1, we talked about it, everyone knows Zelda 1. Zelda 2 completely went the opposite direction, introduced an overworld, a big overworld, action scenes that are all side-scrolling. Like every single action level, so everything that is not exploration on the overworld, even the towns are side-scrolling. And very jump and run heavy. And RPG elements. You can level up in this game. You need to level up in this game. You need spells. You need to strengthen your attack. You need to strengthen your magic. You need to find all the spells. And you need to grind experience points. So, right off the bat, this game feels vastly different because it starts you in a side-scrolling section. It's only like 2 screens, but it serves as an introduction to this new perspective. And when you're in the overworld, you run around and enemies spawn, like small little globules. And once you touch them, you get transported, pretty Final Fantasy-esque actually, into a 2D section. Yeah, I mean Mega Man X kinda has a different vibe than the first 6 games, but still, it's pretty similar. They're good games, but they're just not very experimental. Once you touch an enemy on the overworld, you get transported to a side-scrolling section where you have to fight, and then afterwards you return back to the overworld section. So there's a complete and very distinct separation of exploration and combat. Again, similar to like a Final Fantasy game, where you walk over the overworld and then get a random encounter and join, like, obviously in that case, turn-based battle. Zelda 2 feels weird because of that. It's something that Nintendo hasn't really revisited. There are, like, side-scrolling sections in Link's Awakening and the Oracle games. I don't even know if there's some in Minish Cap, but I think not. But in those games, it's really, really sparse. Like, especially in Link's Awakening, sometimes you just go down a staircase in a dungeon and you have a little side-scrolling section, but it's very, very sparse. And it's more through, like, break up the gameplay, and you don't have any... let's say you don't have a big change in control scheme. So, you walk around the overworld, you go into towns, which is a new thing in Zelda. There were no towns and barely any NPCs in Zelda 1. You talk to the people, you do some quests for them in the hope of getting stuff like new attack moves. You get like jumping up thrust and jumping down thrust, which is something that would, like Shovel Knight and Hollow Knight, jumping and then stabbing down on an enemy. That's like a key thing of what you do in those games. It basically comes from Zelda 2. And explore the world, go into dungeons who are also completely 2D side-scrolling. I mean, obviously 2D, but side-scrolling. And your job is to bring these crystals into the palace, because the story is... I didn't do a spoiler warning. Spoiler warning. I'm sorry, it came very late. 9 minutes in. I'm so sorry. Originally a 3D NES game, there are some like modern homebrews that do some 4 3D. It looks pretty impressive, but it looks kinda hard like to play perspective-wise. It looks irritating a bit, but technically impressive. You're supposed to bring these crystals to these temples so that you are finally allowed into the Grand Temple, where your job is to get the Triforce of Courage, which is something that was introduced in this game. which is the only way to seal Ganon for good, is what they say. Ganon isn't in this game, but he's still like the looming shadow. Again, this is a like direct sequel to Zelda 1, where you defeated Ganon. But if you die in this game, you see his silhouette, and it says Ganon rises again, or the rise of Ganon happens, something like that. Basically, Ganon gets reincarnated when you die. What this game also introduced is that there are 2 different people called Zelda, which is insanely confusing, and I love that they introduced that in the second game. Because the Zelda that you rescued at the end of the last game is not the Zelda you meet, quote-unquote, in this game, which is to be said to be the first person called Zelda, and she's like in a perpetual sleep state. It's confusing, but it's kinda impressive that they, even though they made a direct sequel, they kinda laid the seeds for this whole reincarnation, hero and princess and Ganon repeating storyline. It's honestly kinda impressive. What's also impressive about this game is the freaking difficulty. This is probably the most difficult Zelda game there is, at least in my opinion. I played this game first on the 3DS, I'm pretty sure, so it's probably the Zelda game where I have the longest gap between release and me actually playing it. I've since played it 3 times, including 1 time on stream. There are some VODs on my VOD channel where you can see me play through Zelda 2. It's like 3 streams or something. We got through it pretty quickly. Don't give me ads in my soundtrack, please. There we go. Why is it always the same song? Oh, it's... Right, it's the town themes. They are almost identical. This game is brutal. You have the stubbiest sword in existence, and you have to... It's basically... It's almost like a fighting game. You have to attack high or low, you have to block high or low, and enemies will attack high or low, and will sometimes also block high or low. A lot of enemies in this game are really tanky and really hurt. Especially later on. The final boss is notorious for being insanely difficult. Which, thank God there is like a strategy that makes him trivial, which I did use in my playthrough on stream. While you do get items in this game, they're all like passive things. Pretty much all of them are passive things, like buffs so you can break boulders, or a flute so you can get rid of a road-blocking monster, a raft that gets you across like the ocean. But you get stronger, like your combat abilities get stronger because of spells, and because of you leveling and doing more damage, getting more HP and getting more mana that way. The spells are really cool. It's something that hasn't really been brought back. I mean, there are spells in like Ocarina of Times, but it's not the same thing. It's only problematic that some of the spells are just so good you kind of always want to have them on. Like there's a spell that's makes you only take half damage. There's a spell that makes you jump twice as high. And a lot of those are pretty much mandatory for exploration and for dungeon completion. Especially like the jumping spell, there's some jumps you need it for. There's also a fairy spell that lets you fly. That's also necessary. And of course you need Thunder, the last spell, which you need to have maximum mana for, so you probably need to grind a few levels to get maximum mana. And you need it for the second to last boss, the Thunderbird, because otherwise you can't damage him. This is a pretty tough game. It's not a long game, but it's a pretty tough game. graphic-wise, it's more impressive than Zelda 1, but still, maybe it's nostalgia, but to me it still feels like less familiar. And it suffers, especially the dungeons, for me at least, suffer from the same thing that the Zelda 1 dungeons do. It is, yeah, it looks way better. The issue that I have, but I do have that with Zelda 1, is that the graphic style of the dungeons is identical throughout the board. It's just the color set that's different between the dungeons, which makes it difficult for me to like discern between the dungeons. They all kind of blend into one. I have the same thing with Zelda 1. Whereas come the next game, we would have visually very, very, very distinct dungeons. This game does have some cryptic things, but in general, the amount of cryptic, just try something out to find secrets, has been tuned down from Zelda 1. This is the first game where it feels definitely more like a progression. You get hints in the town to where you would find something, and it feels more like, oh yeah, you're getting pushed in the right direction. Which is pretty much what goes like through the entire series, until like Breath of the Wild, which tries to be more like Zelda 1 again. Zelda 1 is a weird game. And there is a reason that they haven't really done something like this again. Yeah, Link's Awakening. You know what it is? We will get to Link's Awakening, but little tidbit. Link's Awakening is the first game in the series where every dungeon has a different song. That makes a big distinction as well. And it probably helps even more with the distinction when you don't have color to help you with that. There's a reason they didn't like retry what they did with Zelda 2 again. And there's also a reason that it's most often called the worst like mainline official Zelda game. It's pretty hard to argue against that, I feel like. But again, compared to, well, I haven't played Castlevania 2 in so long. But I feel like Castlevania 2 is a pretty like mixed game. It's not terrible, but it's definitely not great. And Final Fantasy 2, which I always bring up, you know how much I dislike that game. Zelda 2 is a fine game. And I highly, highly recommend, if you're interested in it, to give it a shot. It's pretty easy to come by nowadays. Play it on, like, again, Nintendo Switch Online is probably the easiest way to play it nowadays. Or if you have it, like, on a different older Nintendo console, obviously you can emulate it. It's an NES game. Your smart fridge can probably play this game. But I highly recommend at least checking it out. But I honestly understand every single person who says, nah, I'm good, I don't want to go through this, because it's not only weird, it's also pretty difficult. The funny thing is that this game went through like a bit of a phase, I feel like, online, where for the longest time it was like people were shitting on this game and said it's terrible and this is the worst game and it's a terrible Zelda game. And then I feel like in the online discourse it made a complete 180 and people said like, no, this is an unrecognized masterpiece, people just don't get it, and people who said that maybe this wasn't the best game ever got shit on online. And over the last like 5 years, I feel like, it's not like I actively follow Zelda 2 discourse, but I see it pop up here and there. Like over the last 5 or 6 years, I feel like it's mellowed down. People are realizing it can be a good game while still being probably one of the worst, if not the worst, Zelda game. It's definitely I would have to go think about it again and probably replay some other games before making a definitive decision, but it's definitely in the bottom for me. Probably at least bottom 3, if not at the bottom. But I still enjoyed it every single time I played it. And also the music, by the way, is also a significant step up. And we only had like housing and town themes. It's a way longer soundtrack than one. Let me get the song from this game that like persevered later on into the series. And it's this one. But I think the first time this song came back was Smash Bros. Melee, where a remix of this was the theme for the Hyrule Temple map, which was one of the maps that I feel like people who didn't play Melee like seriously, but like when I played Melee with my friends, we most often played on that stage, so I heard this theme a lot. Out of 10, I'd say this is a perfectly fine 7 out of 10 game. 7.5 out of 10. It's aged, and it's difficult, and it can be a bit annoying at times, but it's a good game. It's just not what the series became afterwards, which we'll talk about next time we have a little unscripted review. Thank you so much, Zelda 2. Dungeon theme, get out of here. And that has been 20 minutes again. Oh my god. I always feel like I need less time. So how much can I say about Zelda 2? Only maybe like 15 minutes? No, it's like 22 minutes again. Thanks for listening to my rambling.